Welcome to Learn the Sky, your online resource for learning about the stars.
Learn the Sky is now on Patreon, so if you would like to support this channel in order to learn more about the sky, please visit our Patreon account. The link is listed below. We are also offering new online courses, so if you're interested in learning about the sky in greater detail and would like a guide to help you walk through the sky, please visit learnthesky.com and check out our online courses. Welcome, my name is Janine, and in this video we will discuss the constellation known as Scorpius and one of my own personal favorites to view in the sky. Scorpius is a very ancient constellation, and records of it date back as far as 5,000 years ago. It is one of the 48 constellations identified and recorded by the astronomer Ptolemy in the 2nd century, and its form has changed over the ages. The constellation known as Libra was once a part of Scorpius. The name Scorpius is Latin for scorpion, and its shape is one of the few constellations that resembles what it is supposed to represent. It is classified as a zodiacal constellation, meaning that the sun passes through its boundaries. However, the sun spends the least amount of time in Scorpius when compared to all the other constellations of the zodiac. It is best seen in the summer months in the northern hemisphere, and if you're viewing this from the mid-northern latitudes, it never really climbs high in the sky, but rather skims the horizon. I'll never forget the first time I saw this constellation when I moved to Hawaii. As soon as I got off the airplane and walked onto the tarmac in Kona, I saw Scorpius in all its glory. And here you can see the shape of the constellation kind of makes a J or a hook-like pattern. But first, let's examine some of the core myths that surround Scorpius. In Greek mythology, Scorpius and Orion are often connected through stories. The common theme is that Orion boasted about his hunting skills and the gods heard him. In one story, Zeus challenged Orion to kill a scorpion. In another story, a scorpion was sent to kill him after boasting about his skills. After the battle between the two, Zeus put them in the sky to commemorate the event. This also explains why the constellations of Scorpius and Orion are never seen in the sky at the same time. They are mortal enemies and are meant to be kept apart. In Greek mythology, the tales of Scorpius and Orion can vary, just like many other legends of the stars across cultures. In Hawaiian and Polynesian mythology, we know Scorpius as the fishhook of Maui, the great demigod. There are many stories that surround this legendary folk hero, and stories of Maui are told on the islands of Hawaii, Samoa, Tonga, New Zealand, Tahiti, and many other island nations. There isn't enough time in this video to review all the stories, but they do have similar themes. Maui is often credited with fishing islands from the sea with his magical hook, discovering the secret to fire making that was certainly useful for humans, and for capturing the sun to lengthen the days for growing food. It is very easy to see how Polynesian visualized a hook in the sky, since this constellation takes that exact shape. Of course, with the release of Disney's Moana movie, the legends of Maui have become more well known. However, it is important to remember that each Polynesian culture has their own version of the legends. I do love that people all over the world are getting more exposure to Polynesian culture because of this movie. But moving on, there are probably many other stories of Scorpius out there, but these are the two I chose to focus on for this video. Now let's review the pattern of this remarkable constellation. Here's an illustration of the pattern of Scorpius, and as you begin to learn this constellation, focus on the hook-like pattern as you connect the stars. Some may also see a J-shaped pattern as well, with the 3 stars that connect with the hook. The pattern of this constellation may vary depending on the source you're looking at, but generally all show this hook-like pattern. Here we are looking at the International Astronomical Union map of this constellation, and hopefully you can see the blue line that passes through this constellation, and that is the ecliptic, or the path of the sun. And you can see, as we mentioned before, that the sun spends very little time in this constellation. And if we zoom up to just get a better view, you can see that this constellation is really littered with many celestial objects, which we'll focus on in a little bit later in this video. So here's our first photograph of Scorpius, and as you take a look at this picture, keep in mind there are multiple constellations in this photo. But as you're looking at it, I want you to focus on the brightest star here, and this is known as Antares, which is the brightest star in Scorpius and is often dubbed the heart of the scorpion. If you can find and identify that bright star, see if you can find the hook pattern that traces along this star. So if we were to take a look at what Scorpius looks like, here is the pattern. You can see Antares right here, and the hook goes way down here with its little stinger. And then you have the 3 stars that trace up here, and then this little star right up here is also connected to Scorpius. And notice the patterns in the background. Scorpius is very close to the center of our own Milky Way galaxy, and that's what you're seeing all throughout here. The other constellations you can see or identify are Sagittarius, which is right down here. And this, in fact, is really just the asterism known as the teapot within the larger constellation of Sagittarius. Go see that video for more information. And then up here we have Libra. Now, Libra is definitely one of those constellations in which its depiction varies from source to source. But here you can see this is the region where Libra is located, and these 2 constellations were once connected in ancient times. So here is our next photo of Sagittarius. This is such a beautiful deep sky image, and thank you to David Coughlin for offering this photo for the video. And what I want you to focus on here is the bright star that you can find. And if you can find that bright star of Antares, which is a yellowish color, see if you can find the hook-like shape. Now, of course, the Milky Way really stands out in this photo because it's a long exposure photograph. And you're only going to see the Milky Way if you're in a really dark area where there's very little light pollution. So if we were to point this out, here is where Scorpius is located, and this is where Antares is. And we're going to explore what this region right here looks like further along in the video. Let's keep getting some more practice on identifying Scorpius. So I chose this photo because this is more like what most of us would see if we live in a populated area. And you can see little hints of the Milky Way galaxy in this photo. They kind of look like cloudy areas. But see if you can find the hook-like pattern that's toward the right of the photograph. So if we were to point it out, I'll trace it out for you. Here is where Scorpius is, the little hook with the stinger on the end. Okay, and then part of a constellation is cut off in this photograph, but you can see Antares right there. And you can also notice that there are some celestial objects that stand out. There's some star clusters right here. This is a great region to look at as well. Here is where the Milky Way is that I was talking about. This is Corona Australis, and then Sagittarius is in this pattern. See if you can point out the teapot. And as I'm looking at it, there's the handle of the teapot, there's the cap, and here's the little spout. And I always kind of think of the steam coming out of the teapot as the Milky Way galaxy. Let's take a look at one more photograph in order to help us get more practice identifying Scorpius. This is a really large sky view of the summer sky, and there's about 6 different constellations located in this picture. So first, let's move towards the right of the photograph and see if you can find Scorpius. Okay, you want to look for Antares, that bright orange star, and find that hook-like pattern. Okay? Here, let's go ahead and point this out. So this is where Scorpius is. There's the hook-like pattern. And again, this photograph was obviously taken with a really dark sky because the Milky Way is standing out here. So we've got Scorpius right there, and then we have the teapot asterism of Sagittarius right there. And this is right in this area is the heart of the Milky Way galaxy. So if we were to move to the other side of this photograph, you can see this triangle shape, which is another asterism known as the summer triangle. So we have Lyra constellation right here with the bright star Vega, and then we have Cygnus. Cygnus makes a cross-like pattern. Go see those two videos for more information. And then down here we have Aquila with the bright star of Altair. Aquila is a little bit difficult to point out because most of its stars are pretty faint, but its bright star Altair makes up part of the summer triangle. So again, this is a large sky view of the summer sky in the northern hemisphere, and this is where Scorpius is located. Now it's time to review the bright stars of Scorpius. So the brightest one we discussed already is known as Antares, and it's the alpha star of the constellation, meaning it's the brightest. If you break the name down in its Greek prefix, anti meaning against and Ares meaning Mars, it literally means the rival of Mars. And that's because it has a red color to it, and that is very comparable to the planet Mars. It's often called the heart of the Scorpion, and it's a red supergiant star. It's 12 times the mass of the Sun and 604 light years away. So if we take a look at this star in terms of comparing it to the size of other stars, here we have the Sun. This is Arcturus in the constellation Bootes. Go see that video for more information. And then this right here is how big Antares is when you compare it to Arcturus and the Sun. This dotted line is the orbit of Mars, so it just gives you an idea of how large this sun is. It's the fourth brightest in the night sky, so it's really easy to identify, and this is the star you need to use when trying to identify Scorpius. Our next brightest star is called Lisath, and this is an Arabic name meaning bite of a poisonous animal. That is again in reference to the fact that this star is located in the stinger of the constellation, and it's estimated to be 590 light years away. It forms a nice optical pair known as the cat's eyes with another star called Shaula, which is the next one we're going to look at. Here is Shaula. It is an Arabic name meaning the raised tail. This is a binary star, and both stars are much more massive than the Sun. It's estimated that this pair is 570 light years from Earth, and this star is actually the second brightest star in Scorpius, despite its lambda designation. And sometimes we see that in constellations, because when these stars were designated, we were using our human eyes, which everybody's eyes are different and sees different brightnesses. Depending on your own eyes. So sometimes the stars were named for being brighter than they actually were, or sometimes less, and that happens. The final bright star we'll take a look at in this video is called Dishuba, and it has an Arabic name meaning the forehead. It is a binary star, and astronomers think it may have a possible third star connected to this system, and it is variable, which means its brightness will change over time. The two stars that we do know exist within this system are really large. One is 13 times the mass of the Sun, and the other is 8 times the mass of the Sun. So see if you can try to point out these stars as you identify the constellation of Scorpius. The stars all together are generally of the same brightness or very close to each other, and this is nice because it really makes a great star connection in the pattern when you're looking at Scorpius. Finally, in the last part of this video, we'll examine some of the celestial objects of Scorpius. And this is one of the reasons why I love this constellation so much, because there really is so much to see, and we're only going to cover a portion of what's inside this constellation. So here's the official star map of Scorpius, and as you can see from the yellow areas, there are a lot of celestial objects situated in the boundaries, but we'll actually take a look at another map that shows how much more there really is when compared to this map. So here are some of the major objects you want to look for, and many of these can be seen without magnification or with the unaided eye. So here we have the butterfly cluster, M6 or Messier 6, we have the Ptolemy cluster located right next to the stinger of the pattern. And this one is definitely easy to see if you're in a dark sky area. Here we have NGC 6124. Also in this area, I don't have an extra picture, but there's definitely some celestial objects to point out in this area. Up towards Antares, we have Messier 4, which is a globular cluster, and Messier 80, which is also another globular cluster. Now, if we take a look at a real picture of Scorpius and not just a map, hopefully you can see some of these objects that are situated in here. So here we have M6 and M7 in this area by the stinger. It's very difficult to see the globular clusters located near Antares, but if you have magnification, you can point it out. Here's NGC 6124, and then in this area, you can also see some nebulosity going on, and there's also a lot to see in this area. And as I said, there is just a ton to look at, so make sure you use your binoculars and telescope to check it out. So before we get into the pictures of what these celestial objects look like, I really just want to take a moment to look at this map, because this is a more detailed map of all the different objects that are in Scorpius. And we're going to zoom in here for a minute, but before we do, I just want you to observe, look at how much yellow and green there is on this map. So this constellation is really a great one to look at if you do any type of astrophotography. So let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look. Alright, so here is this more detailed map of the celestial objects within Scorpius, and I want to zoom in here for a bit. So here is Antares, the upper part of the constellation of Scorpius. And we're going to take a look at what this area looks like, but it's really fascinating. You have M4 and M80 situated really close to Antares, and then this green area is a lot of cloudy nebula-like area. So we're going to see some emission and reflection nebulas as well. You can also see with the 3 stars that connect kind of the head of Scorpion, there's some gray areas to focus on as well. This area is Ophiuchi, but if we scroll down to the Scorpion area, or the stinger area, I should say, this, you can see there is just so much to see here. We're going to take a look right here, here, here at these different nebulas. We'll take a look at what this looks like. And as you can see, this is why I love Scorpius so much, because there's so much to see. You take out a pair of binoculars or a telescope, and it's just a feast for the eyes. The first celestial object that we'll examine in this section is called Rho Ophiuchi Cloud Complex, and this is a very complex system. So what we're looking at here is really a boundary between the constellation Ophiuchi and Scorpius. So right here, the brightest star right here is Antares, and it has a yellowish glow because of the cloudiness of the nebula in this area, which is classified as an emission nebula. We also have another emission nebula right here. We're looking at M4, Messier 4, the globular cluster that's located right next to Antares. Now up here is a binary star system called Rho Ophiuchi, and this system is really fascinating to look at. If we zoom out a little bit, here we can see Antares right there. And we have the globular cluster right here, and it's just very, very complex. There's a lot going on in this system. And if you zoom out again, here we see Scorpius, the pattern, the entire constellation. The area that we were just zooming in on is located right here. If we want to take a closer look at these globular clusters, here is Messier 4 to the left, and then Messier 80. They're both globular clusters, which means they're spherical in shape, and the stars in these clusters are pretty old when you compare it to other stars in the universe. Here is one other photograph. Here we have Antares right there. You can see all the cloudiness that comes out from the long exposure photograph. And then we have Messier 4 and then Messier 80 right there. So far we've looked at the upper portion of Scorpius. Now we're going to move on to the tail end of this constellation to take a look at some of the celestial objects that are here. What we're going to focus on right here is M7 and M6 and some of the cool nebulas that are located here. And for this video, we're not going to get a chance to cover everything because as you can see from this detailed map, there's just so much to see. But these are the areas that we're going to focus on. Here is Messier 6. This is often dubbed the butterfly cluster because it has a vague resemblance to the shape of a butterfly. And this is classified as an open cluster of stars, which generally means it doesn't have a definitive shape, and the stars inside it are younger in age, on the order of millions of years as opposed to billions of years, which we find in globular clusters. Go see that video for more information. For me, I kind of see a star shape here as opposed to a butterfly, but really it's up to your own interpretation. Next, we have Messier 7, and this is known as the Ptolemy cluster. This is also an open cluster of stars, and it is really easy to detect with the naked eye. And if you do have some sort of magnification, whether it be a set of binoculars or a telescope, definitely take a look at this cluster of stars. It's fascinating to see. Here is another view of what the stars look like in the Ptolemy cluster. And here they're colored blue, which indicates that these are younger stars on the order of millions of years compared to billions of years. Another cool object to see is the Cat's Paw Nebula, also designated as NGC 6334. And this is a very famous emission nebula and really can only be seen when you're taking deep sky photographs. But I'm a huge cat person and I just love this because it does look like a cat's paw right there. And another cool object is NGC 6302. This is called the Bug Nebula, or sometimes the Butterfly Nebula, different than the Butterfly Cluster, which we saw earlier. And this is a planetary nebula, and it has this really unique shape. I can totally see a butterfly in here as the wings come out here, or maybe a squashed bug if you want to look at it that way. But a planetary nebula is a dying star, and it's when a star has run out of hydrogen and helium and it's starting to expand and expel its outer layers. So definitely unique to see. And this, of course, is a deep sky photograph, so it's taken over long exposure of time. So it also kind of has like an hourglass shape to it. You can look at it that way. And it's definitely fascinating to see. So these two nebulas are located in this region. So kind of near the stinger. This is the hook that we've been looking at, and it's located in this region. We've come to the conclusion of this video, so let's review everything we learned about Scorpius. It's best seen in the summer months and is classified as a zodiacal constellation, which means that the sun passes through it. The best way to find Scorpius is to identify Antares, the bright red star that is often called the heart of the scorpion. From there, see if you can trace out the giant hook pattern. There are lots of celestial objects located in this constellation. So even if you don't have a pair of binoculars or a telescope, if you're in an area that has very dark skies, you should be able to find some clusters that are located in this constellation. And we really only scratch the surface with how many different celestial objects that are located in Scorpius. I wish you luck finding this constellation. It really is one of the most fascinating ones to see, and its shape does resemble what it's supposed to represent, which makes it easy to identify in the sky. Before we finish, I just want to give a big thank you to David Coughlin for donating some of his photos for this video. Be sure to check him out on Twitter to see more of his astrophotography. I wish you luck finding this constellation. If you have any questions about Scorpius, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Also, if you know of any more stories or legends about Scorpius from your area or culture, feel free to share what you know. Good luck and keep looking up.